Well, Japan is not the only place where we are seeing extreme heat and other weather events. In Sweden, people have been evacuated from certain areas as dozens of forest fires rage across the country as far north as the Arctic Circle. Sweden has been struggling to cope with the amount of fires in unusually hot conditions. Severe thunderstorms have affected part of the U.S. southeast. There have been tornadoes in Iowa and wind damage in Kansas and Missouri. And here in the UK, there's been no substantial rain since May, with temperatures tipping past 30 degrees Celsius. Water restrictions have been brought in for some areas. So what's behind these weather events, and to what extent are they linked to climate change? Well, Oystein Hov is a professor at the Norwegian Meteorological Institute.
Well, I think that it's quite obviously related to climate change, but by how much is very difficult to quantify. But weather, as we see it at any time, has a climate change component in it, and it is very likely that some of the more unusual events we now see in terms of temperature have a strong climate change signal in them. Climate change also has a component of adaptation to it. We need to take precautions at the same time as we also need to mitigate, which is to reduce the climate gas emissions.
Right. Now, you talk of adapting. What can governments potentially do to try to mitigate some of this extreme weather that seems to be happening far more frequently?
I think mitigation has to do with the emissions of those gases and particles that affect the climate. And to mitigate means to reduce these emissions. And that has to do all over with the way we use fossil fuels, for instance, and emit CO2 in particular. So that is the mitigation part. And as we all know, to not run into really large changes in climate, we need to reduce emissions to zero, actually, in a couple of decades, like the Paris Accord stated. And that is very difficult. So adaptation is also very important. But adaptation without mitigation is almost undoable and very, very expensive. So these two strategies, mitigation and adaptation, they need to go hand in hand.
All right. And you mentioned the Paris Accord there, and of course we know the United States is still in disagreement with a lot of that. The current administration of President Trump says climate change potentially is not responsible for some of this extreme weather we're seeing. So what can be done then to bring countries together to create some sort of cohesive way to mitigate the problem?
No, I think the like-minded countries and the like-minded businesses, they have to act in concert to go in the right direction. Because if we don't have a large-scale mitigation effort happening, then we really will punish ourselves. We already do it now, and it will become worse and worse, and it will have a large social unsettling effect.
Oystein Hov there speaking to me earlier. Well, stay with us on BBC World News.